Hey, I hope all is well with you. If I was starting from scratch with coffee, my coffee journey, these are the 5 items, tools that I will start with. And I think it's going to be extremely beneficial for you if you're at this starting place in your journey. Or if you're not, you may not have something on this list that may be of help to you. So I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do with coffee is that we're trying to enhance our experience with the taste and flavor of coffee. If that makes any sense. That probably doesn't make any sense, but especially in the beginning when you're drinking coffee. But as you're going about your journey, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways in this whole thing that we call coffee. And before we get started into actual items, I believe one of the biggest things that we can do when we're trying to really discover the items that we truly really need, the essential items, is what is a recipe? My definition of a recipe is the creation of something. And in this case, it's the creation of good tasting coffee. And let's go ahead and start with number one. The number one item that you need, since you are hopefully enjoying the video, you like, subscribe, in order to create something magical, in this case with a cup of coffee, is a kettle. Now this is a gooseneck kettle. You can go ahead and start with this. This is a Bonavita. I'm not too sure if they make them anymore or not, but it's okay. You can find something like this. I prefer the gooseneck because it's easy to pour, and we'll get into the reasons why a little bit later. The most critical part about a kettle is that it's variable temperature. So if you're like a 200 degree Fahrenheit type of person, or 96 or 97 degree Celsius type of brewer or coffee, whatever you like to make your coffee with, you can use those different temperatures, and you can change the different temperatures in order for you to really see if it changes the taste and the flavor of the coffee. So those are the benefits right there. Key takeaway here is that you can use a kettle in a way to where you're seeing what it does to the coffee, how much more of extraction that it actually does, what type of different flavors that a higher temperature gives you versus a lower temperature. So that's number one, a variable kettle, all the way from 212, which is boiling degrees Fahrenheit, and all the way down to like whatever, 160, 180, 180 even works. It just depends on the recipe, the type of brewer that you're using, and really what you're trying to get out the coffee. Okay, so let's talk about number two. Number two is the scale. This is an old school scale. This is about 6, 7, 8 years ago. I'm not too sure if they actually make this one in particular. I like this scale because it goes into increments of 0.1 grams. It also has like pounds, ounces probably for espresso. Pounds, I don't know what you really use it for. If I'm going to use it for like to bag some coffee up after I roast it, sure, I have another scale for that. But I believe the most critical part about a scale is that it's a 0.1 increment in the gram setting. And the reason why a scale is on my list is because you want to be able to create repeatability in that recipe for whichever coffee that you're using. Let's just say over the weekend or during the week that you have this new bag of coffee, right? And you try it one way. How are you really going to measure it out in order to be as accurate as you can, especially when you find that awesome magical recipe? So let's say you use 20 grams of coffee and then you use 300 grams of water, 1:15 ratio, right? So those are the things that you can repeat in order to replicate or not replicate that coffee experience that you really did enjoy. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, I don't think it's controversial. I think it's extremely important, especially when we're talking about specialty coffee, to the point to where we have to be able to grind our coffee. And in this case, I've talked about it a little bit, but here it is. This is the King grinder. This is a K2. They have a K1 all the way to K6. Also have the K6. That's mainly, I'm gonna use that one for espresso. You can use the K2 for pour over mainly. That's what I use it for. An immersion brew if you want to do that. That's your jam. And then what else? Espresso. You can use it for espresso. Espresso, I'm not gonna lie, it's very hard because you have to go a lot finer in the grind with espresso. So you're gonna be cranking the shit out of the handle. And this is what the handle looks like, okay? Easy grinder to use. I usually leave it on one setting and I kind of adjust from there. We can talk about that another day, but a grinder is extremely important. And the reason why I say this grinder is about $70, $80. Check on Amazon, and it'll get you in the ball game, and it gives you that ability to really know if that coffee is shit or not. I don't know if that's the right word, but a lot of times, especially when I was using different grinders and even some of the electrical grinders that are a lot more than this grinder, which is somewhere over there, is that it gives you a good representation of what that coffee is or can be. And if you don't have the clarity that a grinder gives you with the consistency of the grinding of the actual particles of the coffee, then you're always more so second guessing yourself, or if it's coffee, if it's your method. It could be all of that. But at the end of the day, when you're actually using a good grinder, when you dial it in the best way that you know how, either tips and tricks from here or even from other places online, then you know for the most part that that coffee may be the issue, but you know that because you have a decent grinder. Grinder is really, it's everything. It really is. And I believe everybody can start off with a good, decent grinder, and then they can really start to enjoy and explore, or not like their coffee or like their coffee, because the grinding part of the whole game is keeping the whole experience honest when you drink your cup of coffee. Okay, number 4, let's talk about it. At first, it was the Hario V60. That was the thing that I was thinking about as one of the items I can't live without. But truthfully, I still use the Hario V60 more than the Switch. This is a Hario V60 Switch, if you don't know. And the reason why I love this particular inanimate object is because it's versatile. As you can see, you can put the regular Hario V60 filters inside. You can also put cloth filters, fast filters. You can even put a, I had it somewhere in one of my videos. Let me get it real quick. This is the Kalita Wave. I mean, you wouldn't put like 20 filters on it, but you get the point. You can put a Kalita Wave filter on it and it mimics that brewer. So you don't need to buy a flat brewer. This is a pour over. So you have a valve to where you can open and close it. You can do as many or different types of recipes as you want. And that's the beauty about this whole thing. And the reason why I like this one in particular, and the reason why I picked the Switch, is because you can do immersion brew. So just leave this valve up, you know, wait 3 to 4 minutes, however, whatever your recipe may be, with the same coffee, different grind sizes. You can play around with whatever you want to do, and you can make an immersion cup of coffee. So you got immersion and drip in one device. So that's the reason why I said, like, if I had to start, I'll just get this. As you can see in the back, and I'll put some stuff later on, is that I have all the gear that I need and want. But if I was just starting off, and more than anything, more than 80% of the time, I'm using either the Hario V60 Switch or the Hario V60. So those are some of the gadgets that I really do love because of what it does for me when I'm making my cup of coffee. Okay, the last one, which a lot of people probably know already. You know, I couldn't talk about the refractometer. This right here is a VST tool. If you look online right now, this is just really fucking expensive. This is about $800. I wouldn't recommend this one to you. It works great. I got this a decade ago, something like that, and I love it. It helps me. It trains. It's a lot of things. Okay, here's the thing. I think one of the biggest things that you can do is just trust your palates. Just keep drinking coffee and enjoy it, right? But at the end of the day, you want to see really where you're at. You want to see if you're able to calibrate your senses to what you're actually tasting. So this helps you. This gets you there. This can be a big crutch. Don't get me wrong. I go through it a lot of times too when I think about, like, should I play around with this gear or not? Because then I start to judge a lot of things, or psyching myself out whenever I do use this, and I'm not trusting the palate. So they go hand in hand. The reason why this is extremely important is because you can use or test different recipes, and you can change your different grind sizes and your temperatures and all that stuff with the kettle and the weighing of the coffee. The biggest thing really is that this is extremely objective. When we drink our coffee, which is totally fine, it's subjective. It's what we like, what we're interested in right now. Our taste buds, everybody's taste buds are totally different. And when we drink coffee, a lot of times it's subjective. It's dependent on what we like in a beverage for whatever reason. This tool right here, this is objective. This tells you what is reading. That's it. And it just does one number. A TDS, total dissolved solids. That's all it does. And like I said, the beauty of this is that it helps you calibrate not just only your palate, your taste, and your flavors of what you're tasting. It calibrates all the things that you're doing. At the end of the day, we're not robots. What I mean by that is that we may do a recipe, we may have a recipe, we may think that we're doing it the exact same way. We're there, we're like 90, 95%, but we're not robots. But this helps you realize, it's like, okay, how many pours did I actually do? Did I do 5 or 6? Okay, that could affect the TDS. What about the grind size? Oh, there's less brew water weight in the cup. What does that really mean? Do I like that cup better than this one because of how many swirls I did or how much agitation I did? Or what about the temperature? All that stuff helps you understand what you're doing with your coffee. And that's one of the key things about this device. It gets you to think about everything holistically as one. And then you can start to pinpoint or take little things out of it. If you want to get geeky and analyze the whole situation, that's what this device really does. So I highly recommend this. I may put another link for another version that's probably that's totally a lot cheaper that does the same thing that should help you. And I know what you're saying probably. It's like, man, that's all this stuff that he just mentioned. That's pretty expensive, Oki. That's expensive shit, right? It is. It is, but at the end of the day, if we're drinking coffee, it's not a cheap hobby. It's really not. But when you think about it, when you have these tools, it just enhances the whole experience. It just makes you a better, mindful coffee drinker because you're geeking out anyway. You're deep into that rabbit hole. So why not really go in the rabbit hole to the point to where you are getting less frustrated. You're understanding that coffee more and more and more. And as many recipes and tricks and tips that people may give or even that I give, the beauty of all this stuff right here is that you can make that judgment for yourself with whatever coffee that you're using. And that's the beauty of all this. And I think that's where we are. And I think that's going to help you in your journey if you're just starting fresh. And if you're not starting fresh, guess what? And if you don't have all the stuff that I just mentioned, probably pick up one or two other things. I think for the most part, most people have everything that I've just mentioned. You just don't have this. And I think this is critical in all of this. But to wrap everything up, to wrap this video up, if I was really starting and I had only one thing that I had or could get, somebody had a gun to my head and it was like, hey, Oki, you only get one thing, which one would it be? This right here, the Hario V60 Switch. The reason why is because I can go ahead and get ground coffee. So I don't have a grinder. I can get ground coffee. I can get different filters for this thing. I can work on my different techniques in order to extract whatever different things that I want. Now I don't have a refractometer because I'm just working with this. I'll use my palate, train my palate, kind of think about the coffee, look at the notes on the bag, kind of get an idea of what that roaster has interpreted of what the flavors are, and to see if I can play around with different techniques in order to get those flavors or just determine what I get from my own creation with the recipes that I have. With the kettle, I don't have to get a kettle. I can go ahead and boil some water. Sometimes I have a hard time saying boil, but boil some water. After I boil the water, either just go ahead and just use that brew water from the get-go, pour slowly. I'm just using the spout. I don't have a gooseneck. And then just judge the coffee, judge the taste from there. If it's too hot, wait another minute or two. Use the exact same amount of water so then you can gauge how much the temperature is dropping, and then you can go from there. Scale, use a teaspoon, a tablespoon, or whatever type of instrument in order for you to be able to repeat the exact same recipe, especially if you find something that really works. So at the end of the day, you just really need this. But that other stuff, it makes it a lot easier. You don't have to worry about water weight. You don't have to worry about using a different tablespoon and teaspoon and all that. You have all the gear that I just mentioned in order to really nail it, hone it down to the way to where you can be able to repeat whatever you're trying to do with that creation. Because again, a recipe to me is just creating something. And in this case, we're just trying to create an awesome, magical cup of coffee each and every time. As much as we can. Sometimes we fuck up. That's what I got for you today. Let me know what you think. Is there anything on the list that you may add to it or take away? Let's talk about it. Talk to you later. Bye.